Imagine coming home from vacation, and there's a stranger living in your mansion, wearing your bathrobe, eating your food, and then they call the cops on you. This is a movie. This is the real-life story of the HOA Karen who thought she owned a millionaire's home. And trust me, it gets crazier from here. You won't believe this. Imagine pulling up to your own home after a long trip, only to find a complete stranger living inside, and then they call the cops on you. That's exactly what happened to David Miller, a successful businessman who had just returned from a 2-week overseas trip. David had been working nonstop for months. Back-to-back meetings, endless deadlines, and barely any time for himself. So when he and his wife, Sandra, finally booked a vacation to Europe, they were beyond excited. It was meant to be 2 weeks of pure relaxation. No phone calls, no work emails, just sightseeing, good food, and time together. Before leaving, they locked their mansion in their quiet gated community, set the high-tech alarm system, and left the keys with no one. After all, why would they? They weren't expecting visitors. The place was secure, and the neighborhood was considered safe. But the moment David pulled into the driveway that afternoon, something felt wrong. There was a car parked out front, an old beige SUV that looked completely out of place next to the luxury vehicles usually in the neighborhood. His stomach tightened. As he got closer, he noticed the garden lights were on, even though it was broad daylight. The curtains, which he and Sandra always kept closed while away, were wide open. Through the glass, he could see movement inside, someone walking around casually like they owned the place. David's mind raced. Was it break-in? A neighbor checking on the house? Or something far worse? He grabbed his keys, walked toward the front door, and that's when the door swung open. Standing there was a woman he had never seen before, coffee mug in hand, wearing a smug expression, like he was the intruder. As David walked up to the front door, ready to put his key in the lock, it suddenly swung open from the inside. He froze. Standing there was a middle-aged woman he had never seen in his life. She had a perfectly styled blonde bob haircut, was dressed in a bright pink jogging suit, and casually held a coffee mug like she just stepped out of her own kitchen. The most unsettling part? She had the confidence and body language of someone who belonged there. "Can I help you?" she asked, her voice dripping with irritation, as if David was some salesman interrupting her morning routine. David blinked in disbelief. "Yes, you can, by telling me why you're in my house." The woman raised an eyebrow, crossed her arms, and smirked. "Excuse me? This is my home. I've been here for 2 weeks. You must be confused." For a second, David wondered if this was some kind of prank, maybe a misunderstanding. But before he could say another word, she whipped out her phone with exaggerated speed. "I'm calling the HOA and the police," she declared loudly, making sure the whole neighborhood could hear. "There's a suspicious man on my property." David's jaw tightened. Suspicious man? This was his mansion. Every brick, every tile, he had paid for it. But the way she spoke with complete confidence made it clear this wasn't confusion. This was pure entitlement. She wasn't defending herself. She was claiming ownership. And judging by her tone, she truly believed she had the right to throw him off his own property. David took a deep breath, realizing the situation was about to get much, much worse before it got better. Within minutes, a tall man in a navy blazer and khakis came striding up the driveway. It was Mr. Thompson, the local HOA president. His expression was a mix of self-importance and annoyance, as if he had been inconvenienced by David's presence. And here's the kicker. He greeted the woman like an old friend. "Karen, what's going on?" "You look upset," he said, giving her a reassuring pat on the shoulder. David's eyes narrowed. So her name was Karen Whitfield. Karen wasted no time spinning her story. "This man is trying to break into my house. I've been living here for 2 weeks while keeping an eye on the place. You know it's been abandoned for months," she claimed, her voice loud enough for a couple of nosy neighbors to start peeking from behind their curtains. "Abandoned?" David's jaw nearly hit the ground. Karen went on, "I told everyone in the community I had HOA approval to stay here. The neighborhood needs to maintain appearances. We can't have an empty property bringing down our image." David tried to keep his cool. He pulled out his wallet and showed his driver's license, the property deed, and even scrolled through his phone to display photos of him and Sandra inside the house, birthday parties, Christmas mornings, vacations. But Thompson and Karen kept talking over him. "We don't believe you," Thompson said flatly. "Frankly, you look out of place for this neighborhood." That was it. David's patience snapped. "You know what's really suspicious?" He shot back. "A complete stranger living in someone else's home for 2 weeks, eating their food, drinking their wine, and wearing their bathrobe. That's what's suspicious." Karen just crossed her arms tighter and smirked. About 10 minutes later, the quiet street was suddenly flooded with flashing blue and red lights. 2 police cruisers pulled up, and before the officers could even step out, Karen practically sprinted toward them. Her coffee mug was gone, replaced with frantic hand gestures as she pointed at David like she'd just uncovered a wanted fugitive. "Officers! This man broke into my home," she shouted, her voice trembling just enough to sound convincing. The 2 officers glanced at each other, then turned to David. Their hands rested casually near their holsters, not aggressive, but cautious. "Sir, can we see some identification?" one of them asked. David didn't argue. He calmly reached into his pocket, pulled out his driver's license, and handed it over. But then he took a step further. "Before you take another step," he said firmly, "I think you need to see this." From his pocket, he pulled out his phone and opened his home security app. Thanks to his cloud-synced system, every motion inside and outside the house had been recorded, including the exact moment Karen broke in. He held the phone out, and the officers leaned in to watch. The footage was crystal clear. Karen prying open the side door with a screwdriver, slipping inside, and then a few hours later, hauling in her suitcases as if she were moving into a hotel. The officers straightened up, their eyes narrowing. One turned to Karen. "Ma'am, care to explain this?" Karen's confident smirk faltered. She stammered, I was just taking care of the place." The HOA knew. But before she could finish, one officer glanced at her SUV and spotted items piled inside: jewelry boxes, electronics, and Sandra's designer handbags. That was all they needed. Karen didn't get to argue her way out this time. The moment the officers confirmed the security footage and saw the stolen items in her car, she was handcuffed right there in the driveway. She was charged on the spot with breaking and entering, trespassing, and theft. Mr. Thompson, the HOA president, immediately stepped forward, trying to smooth things over. "Officers, I think there's been a misunderstanding." Karen was just... One of the officers cut him off sharply. "Sir, unless you want to be included in this report, I suggest you step back." That shut him up instantly. Over the next few days, David and Sandra worked tirelessly to reclaim their home from the chaos Karen had left behind. The fridge had been raided, with nothing left but condiments. Their expensive wine collection had been opened, half-empty bottles scattered around. Some of their antique furniture had scratches, stains, and even cigarette burns. But the violation went deeper than just property damage. It was a feeling of being invaded, their private space treated like some stranger's playground. David wasn't about to let it slide. He filed a lawsuit not only against Karen for damages, but also against the HOA for enabling her and refusing to acknowledge his proof of ownership. The story quickly spread to the neighborhood, and thanks to social media, far beyond it. Soon, HOA Karen became infamous online as the woman who thought she could claim a millionaire's mansion simply because it was empty for a few weeks. Now back in his home, David has upgraded his security system. Every movement triggers an instant alert to his phone. As he told friends with a half smile, "Next time I go on vacation, I'm not just locking